There are reflections all over Times Square. There are many different parts, like we can zoom in right here and look at the cars right here, where you can see that this is reflecting the storefront behind it, the little newsstand here. This is reflecting a building that's not even visible within the scene. And here we have this cab. This cab that we see right here is being reflected on the side of this car right there. Now, creating these reflections in many cases is just a question of taking what's being reflected, do a little flip horizontal on it, and then distorting it to fit the shape of the object that's reflecting it, like here. Now, creating this scene here was pretty easy. Now, it has to be in reverse. Now, this isn't actually this cab, though in the scene it's supposed to be. I simply took this cab here, and I didn't have to flip the car, but I did have to flip the reflection. So when you look at it here, you see that it is in fact the same cab, but I have taken the reflection and I flipped it. Same little reflections of light and so on, but I flipped that logo to make it look like it is in fact a reflection. Pulling back, let's go in here and we'll zoom in on this little area here. Now here we see that this building is being reflected in this big glass area here. All right, there are other reflections all through the area, but let's concentrate on this one right here, because this one required a little more distortion and effects to make it look right. There we see the Toys R Us way back there, just peering through the side of the building. Now this requires a little study of the angles of what's going to be reflected and so on. Now these are big panes of glass, really big, which means that there is going to be distortion because they do buckle and twist and so on. The nature of glass in this size, in this situation, will cause distortions. So one thing that's good is to not have a continuous line. Like here, we see that this little section of the store is being reflected there, and you see that it's being distorted unequally in each pane, so it makes them look like individual panes of glass. Let's look at this whole little section and see how it was done. Right here we have the starting file of where this was created. Now to create that reflection right there, I took the basic file of this section of the building without that reflection of light, because that reflection of light is based on where we're standing and we see some sign reflected there. In the reflection in the glass, we will not see that reflection. So I took this file before I added that reflection and then duplicated it and brought it into here and put it into this area. Then I distorted it, very much like I did in the movie on the iPhone ad, where I created these guides, as you can see right here. These guides allowed me to go in there and distort the scene to fit the area of the windows. So when we look at the layers, we see that we have quite a few layers that make up that reflection. I have them in a folder called Reflections. There's the guide that's right there on top. And then there's multiple layers that make up those reflections. There's the MTV reflection. And you notice that these are straight. They haven't been distorted yet. And each one of these has a mask. Now these masks are hiding these portions of the glass. There's a section in the series discussing layer masks where you can go in there and find out how these guys were created. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take a particular area, like you see the outer wall and so on. Right here, this particular one is the face scene in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that particular layer and I'm going to select this little portion right here. Now I can distort that independently. It is that layer. So I can take that layer, and if I want to see it completely, I can go in there and just bring up the opacity a little bit so I can see it better. And there it is. So I can go in here and let's say we use something like maybe liquefy. And in liquefy, I can go in there and start to distort that section of the glass independent of the others, so that I can go in there and make it look more realistic. It was flipped horizontally, as you can see by the text and so on. So now I can do things like, let's say we take the blow tool, and I'll take a much larger brush size and just kind of hold it in place right there, right? And it's going to go in there and bloat that area, just like that. And then I'm going to go in here and maybe take this warp tool and just kind of bend this down a little bit and bend this over or in, just to create that illusion. These are distorted, and I definitely want to push that down so that that line doesn't match up to the one next to it. So I go in there and just do a couple of little distortions, just so it starts to look a little more like it's a distortion in the glass. And when I click OK, we see that that area now got distorted. and each section was handled independently. So this one was also distorted and so on. And once they were done, I bring the opacity back down to where it belongs, and we see that we have a reflection inside that glass that looks realistic.